Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good night. Wherever and whenever you're listening to this, welcome to the Bitaxe Townhall, your bi-weekly session of getting news all around the Bitaxe project, everything that is going on in Open Source Miners United, and what else is brewing in the open source scene. I'm One Clue, your host, and I'm happy to be here. And today, obviously, we want to talk about things that are going on and the news that everybody of you are waiting for. So first things first, I do hope that most of you guys have seen that we have a new release called version 2.8.0. And while that is an amazing thing, there are also a couple other amazing things going on. For example, the BTC Conference in Vegas, which I'm not sure if this is over or still going on. I'm not there. I just have seen that Matt from Solosatoshi, for example, was there on the stage speaking a little bit about decentralization and mining in general and the Bitaxe project, obviously. So that was awesome to see and to read. And other things are coming as well. I want to make sure that everybody of you who's in the audience here does know what these town halls are about. We do see usually new people coming in, which is awesome. And I do see plenty of people that are sticking here around and coming back every single time, which is so awesome to see. So thanks for everybody who's being here in the audience. But what I wanted to say here is that these town halls are usually for you to come in, hang around, ask a couple of questions. And if you want to make sure to come up on stage and just have a chat, you can always raise your hand. I'll make sure to bring you up on stage. But be aware about these town halls are recorded sessions. With that out of the way, I do think we can start and jump into the version 2.8.0, which is the latest release for your Bitaxe. But before I do talk about all these things that are introduced with it, I do see that we have one of Solosatoshi's being in here. I'm not sure, Comex10, if you want to come up on stage and talk a little bit about Vegas or so. I would be happy to hear a little bit about it. I'm not sure if Matt was the only one of the Solosatoshi group, or however I call them, was there in Vegas, or if all of them were over there. So let's quickly see. He's writing in the chat. Okay, he's checking if Matt could join. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. But I don't know what people are doing usually at this time. It's a little bit tricky, especially that these town halls are recorded in a time that suits me mostly well. I'm not sure if this time suits everybody else well, but well, it is what it is. So we do see a couple new people here in the chat. Alan Tyndall, who is writing that he does have 2 cameras and he's very new to this. This is awesome. So for you to know, these town halls are the places where you can ask basically every question that you do have. And I'll make sure that we do get these answers that you need, or whatever you need to feel of. With that, I think while we're waiting for a couple of responses from Matt, if he's willing to come up on stage, we'll dive into what has been going on with the latest release for the Bitaxe firmware. Because there are so many things. I did a video about it, but I do know that not everybody is watching these, and therefore I want to make sure that you know what's going on there. Obviously, there are a couple of bug fixes involved with the release. Usually, we do have 2 different types of releases. Everything from the firmware wise will start with a version 2 dot something. And if you see the second digit going up, this is a monthly release. If you see the third digit going up, this is a hotfix, something that is coming irregularly, some days, some weekend, somewhere in the middle of the night. These are just hotfixes that are coming out if there's something major that needs to be fixed. For example, from time to time, we do have a couple of these manufacturers reaching out to us and telling us, well, there is a bug with the self-test or something like this. Can you fix it? And then something is going on there. And yeah, then we do have a hotfix for something that is crucial, especially for making sure that everybody who is creating these Bitaxe devices does produce them at a certain standard. And therefore, these self-tests need to be at the top notch. I'm sorry. So yeah, well, these are basically the things to know about the firmware releases and how they work together with like the second digit and the third digit and what they do basically mean. But well, we are going so far into a new style of XOS and what's going on with the firmware in general, because we have new improvements when it comes to the UI and the user interface and interaction in general. We have a new dude who is committing basically daily currently, which is insane. He's Duck Eggs. He was doing a ton of work when it comes to the UI and UX improvements and experience on this one there. So really huge thanks to you for doing that and taking on a couple of these issues and bugs that are floating around there for a while. Especially it's awesome to see that we have so many developers. Some of them are into UI stuff, others are into, I don't know, backend stuff, ASIC stuff. So we have so many different people. Not everybody can work on everything. So it's nice to have more and more people coming in and joining into it. It's a little bit difficult for non-techie people to get into GitHub and getting into contributing. But even though we do see from time to time people joining into GitHub, making accounts over there and submitting issues, making us aware, so the developers aware about what kind of issues are going on. And this is really awesome to see. So the most important things that I do think that are really nice to see are three things. The first one is plenty of you guys, they do use the Bitaxe at a different variety of locations. Some of you run them in their dorm, others in the kitchen or what else, or in a server room, who knows. But the most crucial part about the Bitaxe is obviously it does use Wi-Fi. It does use the 2.5 gigahertz band and not the 5 gigahertz band, because the ESP32S3, the chip that's located on the Bitaxe, is not really capable of doing a 5 gigahertz. Anyway, what's a really nice feature is with the version 2.8.0, if you go over to the logs page, you actually do see your Wi-Fi RSSI. This is basically the strength indicator for how good the connection between your Bitaxe and your Wi-Fi hotspot, whatever, is. And it also does have like different colors. If the connection is really good, it will be represented in the color theme of your XOS. And if it is a little bit less good, it will change its color to whatever is in there. So red is probably the worst one to have, but it could be confusing, especially if you do use the red theme on XOS. So this is one really nice thing to see. And another nice thing that is also hand in hand going on with this is new screens have been introduced into XOS and into the firmware for your Bitaxe. So now you're not only able to use different screen sizes, you're also able to use different screens in general. For now, we only have implemented the SSD 1306, which is basically the standard small display. And this was nice. It suited a couple of people. What we have heard more and more people coming up and telling us, well, this is nice, but we need something that is a little bit more appealing or at least better readable. So what I did, I was working on the SSD 1309 and implemented that. And while I was doing that, Mutachum was also working on implementing another screen, the SH1107, and he did that. He says a couple of things are still not working on this one, but he did an amazing job on that. So it's really fantastic to see that we now do have two more screens that are more or less usable with your Bitaxe, which improves obviously the experience with the device. There are other things going around like the Bitaxe Touch and stuff like this, but these are tied either to companies or other things, so they are not natively into XOS. But with the version 2.8.0, we now do have two more screens natively introduced into the firmware, which is great to see. And hopefully in the future, we can also support even other screens as well. So that's basically the second biggest thing that I do think is really needed. And the third thing that is not really seeable by most of you is there was a ton of code quality and refactoring going on, which is so awesome because, you know, even though developing on all of this stuff, it is sometimes really hard to keep track about what's going on, especially with having multiple people contributing and making sure that XOS is working in the best shape and form that it can. It is so nice to have more people making sure that we now have a clear structure, a clear path of what is basically going on with code, where is what, and how is it actually defined. Because the nicest thing to have in a code base is to actually see where you do configure your stuff or something else. And Mutatram did such a fantastic job. I can't highlight his work enough because he refactored a ton of code. It was a pain to review all of this, but we got it into it. It's working perfectly, and it makes it easier because previously code was scattered all around, and there is still a lot of code that's scattering all around, but we are trying to unify it, make it better usable by developers. So that's not really seeable by the, I'd say, mainstream people that just take a look on, yeah, basically on the UI or on the device itself, but rather this is really improving the development on the firmware itself, which is so awesome. And by the way, I do see I see Matt here in the audience. If you want to raise your hand and come up on stage and talk a little bit about Vegas, that will be awesome. So we'll make sure to bring you up on stage here. So Fox was also writing Kafka the API. Yeah, dude, you're so right about it. So the API, you do know if you type in slash API slash system slash info, you do get a little bit of information about your BitX. But what you can also do is a couple other things with it. The API is just some sort of an interface where you can retrieve data or send data to your BitX. And this also got plenty of improvements, which are mostly tied also on things that you don't really see. There's so much going on in the background of these firmware changes and what else is coming into the BitX. But the nicest thing here is that we do improve on basically every corner that we currently can think of, because we have maintainers now basically for everything. We have nice people in UI, we have nice people in firmware stuff, we have nice people in ASIC configuration and programming. It's so awesome, and this is so thriving and moving the whole project and movement forward. This is so awesome to have here. So kudos also to the work on the API and plenty other things. We also have a couple new commits into the code base for the upcoming BitX, the BitX GT. So with that, you do see we're getting closer and closer to the release of it, and probably we'll see it in the next 2 months. That's my guess here. With that, Matt, hey, nice to have you here on stage.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
So you have been in Vegas on the Bitcoin conference. I'm not sure, is this event still ongoing or are you back at home?
No, it actually ended Thursday, so we had Friday to kind of recuperate and fly back to Houston and just kind of gather our thoughts. Man, it was a really awesome event. There was probably 35,000 people at the conference. So quite often it was just shoulder to shoulder traffic no matter where you went. It's crazy.
It sounds quite a heavy event of being a little bit trafficked there and having plenty of people over there. So, what was basically the main purpose of the event? Let's say I'm not really used to the Bitcoin conference in Vegas or general in the US. So, I don't know how these events actually look like apart from seeing them on X or on videos on YouTube. Can you tell us a little bit about the general purpose of this conference and what you did there, what kind of role you played over there?
Yeah, so Bitcoin Magazine, they're really great people, but they are like really corporate, right? So their main focus is a lot of the bigger people who speak on stage. So, they had the Vice President of the US, Michael Saylor there, of course. Ross was a really good appearance. He gave a really good speech, and many other just influencers in the Bitcoin space. A lot of that stuff is pure noise, but the signal really happens in the open source area, the bazaar area, a lot of signal in some of the smaller business booths, just the mom and pop Bitcoin businesses, and up on the mining stage. So I actually got to be on two panels on the mining stage, which was kind of cool and scary at the same time. I'm not used to talking in front of people. on stages, but luckily it was, smaller crowds, smaller stage, not so much attention as the big stage. So I think I did okay. Everyone said I did okay, so that's good. And just talked about BitX, man, and open source mining. People are still super pumped about the open source mining area of Bitcoin mining. A lot of interest still in BitX and definitely the NerdX lineage as well. So people just wanting to know what's next, what's coming and how to get as much hash power as possible in their homes. So we thought this year a lot more people would be familiar with BitX, but there was still a lot of overall inquiries and people asking, "What do you guys do? What is this on your table?" Um, there were still a lot of people who knew what they were, but there's definitely still a lot of hype and interest around BitX, and it's definitely starting to become a well-known, I would say, brand. I know it's an open source project, but BitX is starting to be a household brand, which is really, really awesome.
I mean, I do remember like 1 year ago, BitX, a couple of people knew about it, but not really that much. And if you would go to any sort of conference or event, most of the people would take a look at you, are a little bit confused, and just the nerds do know what you're talking about. So, how was it this year on the BTC conference over there? And like Scott told me on the last event, he was basically everybody knew about the BitX. How was it over there?
Yeah, so there were some people who don't really know about home mining, but you could see for the most part where people would walk past and they would see a bit axe and their eyes would light up. They'd be with a group of their friends and they'd be like, "Oh, there's the bit axe," and they would all come just kind of scope out everything that we had lined up on the table. So there's definitely a lot more people that know about bit axe. Definitely a lot more than 1 year ago. The overall feeling or the overall environment is like way more pumped this year than it was last year. You know, Nashville was kind of crazy last year because the BitX literally hit a block, hit its first block a day before the conference
That was
started.
so
That's what
crazy.
I know. You remember the town hall, how crazy everything was, man.
It
Our phones
is.
didn't stop
It's
for
still.
like
It's
3 days. It
so
was
crazy. And I mean, we did a town hall or a quick town hall on the second block as well. Let's see when the third block will be hit. Hopefully on the official public pool and not a self-hosted one. No, a self-hosted one would be even better.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It should be soon. Should be within a couple months. I know we're trying to get as many out there as possible, and it just, it makes that event happen a lot faster too. So I think we got a little bit over 500 bit axes into the hands of people in Vegas, which was
Oh,
really good. Yeah, I mean, BitX it's almost going mainstream, man. I mean, I don't know if you guys seen the video, but the Gemini exchange, the Winklevoss twins, they were running a BitX in their Gemini branded Cybertrucks that they were giving away. So
I
that went
saw that.
really crazy.
That was looking so cool.
Yeah,
I mean, the
yeah,
car
it's
looks
starting.
ass, but the BitX looks good on it.
It does. Matches the oranges matched. It looked really good. So I gave the Winklevoss twins gave them a little spiel about open source mining and what BitAxe is. I think it's important that those types of people get these devices in their hands too, because maybe there's a possibility that, maybe it piques their interest and they can really help the space out too. I think everything in due time, but just try to get BitX in everyone's face, man. And much like Bitcoin, people take it in their own doses and dive in when they're really ready. But BitX is FedEx is a known household brand, so it's
Well,
starting to
while
be
you
really,
talked about
really,
the
really
Twinkle
awesome.
Twins, I'm a little bit interested in it. I do see, for example, Node Nation over in El Salvador. They do quite a lot of work when it comes to education, especially in mining. They started with the small nerd miner to get the kids in the school used to what mining is, how it can look like on a toy device like the nerd miner. And lately, they also started to work with Bitaxes and teach the kids on these ASIC devices. Have you got any sort of a feel if education about mining or Bitcoin in, not Bitcoin in general, but mining in general was a thing over there on the conference? Because this is probably one of the weakest things that I do see on conferences, that everybody's trying to sell you their mining hosting servers or their new device, but nobody's actually talking about how mining works or educating you about it. Was it any different this year?
Um, that's what the panels were for on the mining stage. But what kind of sucked was that they only gave the panels 30 minutes and there's like three people to each panel, and there's just not much time to talk about things.
Mm.
And like when you're talking to a large group of people who are at a Bitcoin conference that don't know much about Bitcoin mining, like there's so many avenues which you can go down to try and explain Bitcoin mining down to a molecule. There was a really good panel with me and John from FutureBit and another guy which made a website which basically tells people how much pleb mining hash power we need to take back the Bitcoin network. I actually completely forgot his name and I feel terrible about that.
I've
But
seen that too, yeah.
yeah, it was a panel on like from template to it was a full stack of Bitcoin mining. And I mean, you do what you can. Each person is basically only allowed 10 minutes, so definitely not enough time to educate people, but I completely agree that there needs to be more education in this space because that is what makes people want to get in this space, and that is an easy onboarding technique. A lot of people think this stuff is really, really complicated to set up, but often we tell people, hey, look, here's an instruction guide. You can literally get this thing on in 5 minutes. You just have to change a few settings, press save and restart, and you're literally mining.
Yeah,
But
it's basically
there's,
a three-step guide, right? Plug in the
yeah,
power, set up your Wi-Fi and your Bitcoin address, press save and reset. There you go. That's it.
yeah, that's it. And then there were a lot of people who just want to know what the ROI is on a BitX. And I'm like, well, look, home
Yeah.
mining on itself is not profitable. It's just not, right? Like maybe if ASIC chips take another leap on efficiency, maybe we can start getting there. But it's mostly your home electricity rate, right? Which kind of locks you out from ROIing ever. So it's
But
explaining to a lot of people about joining a pool or solo mining. Well, a lot of people aren't sure if they need their own node to run a BitX. So it's just we spent a lot of time, I mean, over the course of 3 days, just educating people by the boatloads that come to our booth and bombarded us with questions. It was a lot of talking.
that's good. That's really good to hear. I mean, especially talking about stuff like, okay, does it ROI any time or what do you want to do with it? It also really greatly ties into a couple of questions that we do have in the chat, and maybe you want to jump onto them with me together. Because we do have a question here, which is if there's any way to put two cameras together to mine solo mining together.
Yeah, so I mean, what we would tell people in that instance is basically being that you are in possession of those two units with those two ASIC chips, when you assign a wallet address to those two devices that you control, they're technically working for you. So there is no physical linking other than just putting your wallet address in there. So as long as the BitX has a wallet address that you control, those two units are submitting shares on your behalf, all for your electricity.
Yeah, and so basically, if you do have more devices and all of them are mining to the same address, you're just increasing the odds of finding a block, because with every single hash rate that you do add to it, the more likely is it to find a block, even though the likelihood is kind of small, but it goes up if you do have multiple ASICs working for you.
Yeah, and I actually had this question too when I first ran across Bitaxe and started mining for the first time myself. Um, but if you actually give them the same physical address, receiving address across all Bitaxes, you can actually see them displayed in public pool, and it'll actually combine your hash power if you use that address to basically not really log into public pool, but to identify your miners. It'll combine all the hash rate and it'll show you all of your hash rate that is assigned to that wallet address. So that's kind of a good mental thing to note.
We also do have a little bit of a more deep dive topic here. I'd say there was the question, if you're completely new, and I probably do think you got maybe kind of the same question on the conference as well. If you're completely new to Bitcoin mining, having your own node, what kind of node would you recommend? What would your answer be to that?
So I know like one clue, you're huge on Start 9.
Oh yeah.
I really like Start 9 too, especially their pure servers. But like I wish there was a way where we can get nodes more um more accessible or more more affordable because I feel like nodes start getting really expensive, and I feel like a node is a really critical point of participating in Bitcoin as well, right? Like we always say, hold your own keys, own some hash power, and run a node. But you start getting into the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars for nodes, up to $1,000, and it starts to become maybe unreachable to the average person because a lot of people want to know what does this do for me? They want an ROI. When people think of Bitcoin, they're not really in the mentality. People outside of this group, we're talking about average retail people. They're more in the mind frame of what can this do for me? How's it going to make me money? How will it pay me back? And nodes just don't really do that, right? They offer more sovereign ways to move your Bitcoin and actually solo mine, for privacy and other reasons. But I mean, I'm a fan of Start 9. I'm a fan of Umbral. I tell you what, FutureBit actually just released a solo node. So instead of having the node with a miner, now they'll have a node on its own. So we actually want to work with them and see if we can bring that to our website as well. I'm really curious on what the UI looks like. Supposedly they'll give you an option of which client to run, if you're into that whole debate right now. And then hopefully they put, public pool on there, and maybe they'll put ocean on there and other things. I don't really know. I know they had a prototype of what they want to offer. I think they're still building the node platform, but I'm really interested to see what FutureBit does. And as well, I think more competition in the node area will bring prices down as well and make nodes, more affordable, which would hopefully lead to more adoption.
I mean, one cool thing about them is with the Apollo devices, they do have like the all-in-one device. It's a node, it's a miner, it's a pool all in one. And one thing that's cool about it is that CK Pool software is running on that. So this is also open source and you can legitimize it if you want to take a look on the code. So that's really cool to see. But other than that, well, one of the biggest issues probably to us or me myself as being a developer here is I do value open source higher than anything else. And I
Yeah.
do have like this taste of like, well, I don't know if I want to take a look on anything that's closed source if it comes to something as valuable as Bitcoin. I mean, obviously, open source does come to a couple of points where you need to stop talking about it. If you're talking about your daily used phone or your notebook, that doesn't really make sense. But if you want to use something like Bitcoin and use it as your daily ledger, then it might be crucial to a couple of you to have the option to verify what you're using there. And that's always what I'm trying to anticipate there. But well, as you said, running a node is quite a challenge, and especially it's overseen by plenty of people and plenty of companies as well. And the ones that we do see, they get quite expensive these days, which is insane because all you actually need is like a mini computer, just a second-hand device off of eBay, and flash with a USB stick some firmware on it. It also takes just like 5 to 10 minutes. And the only difference then comes into what kind of firmware you want to use. There are easy setup and easy UI looking stuff like Umbrel, which is nice. It does have some open source stuff to it, but also some closed source stuff to it. So it does come with a couple of benefits and disadvantages. But that's on the easy side, more looking into people that are just wanted to get ready to set it up and be running with their own node. And then if you want to go a little bit more into this rabbit hole and discover what's going on behind the scenes, there's something like Start9, which is also super easy to set up. But then after the setup, it comes quite a challenge to get used to it and use it in a proper way because it is heavily focused on security, on privacy. So yeah, adding these complexity factors into it, it becomes quite a challenge for the daily average user, I'd say.
Yeah, I think if this community, if the OSMU community could really just kind of formulate something, like make make our, you guys, we all make our own node and kind of, I know the bandwidth here, it probably gets stretched thin at times, right? Hopefully with more adoption, more people can start to contribute. That's also a huge thing that we try to do is we try to push people over to the Discord. And a lot of people are like, how can I help? I have money, but how can I help? And I'm like, well, money is not the biggest thing, right? Like you could actually donate your time. And if you're a software developer, software engineer, any of those things, if you know a lot about hardware, computers, I was like, your skills could be highly desired in the OSMU community. Like just find a channel and start participating, or hell, just make your own project and people will adopt it if it's like super cool and has a super awesome use case, right? But I think if this community could create our own node and it had like a super easy to navigate UI, could be fully open source, all better. I think like the industry needs like a cheap node hardware solution that isn't proprietary that anyone can kind of spin up. Kind of like how a Raspberry Pi used to be, right? But even to spin one of those up now is almost, cost as much as just buying like the Umbrella or like the low level Start9 out of the box. I think FutureBit's coming in around 350 for their node. So it's not incredibly bad, but when you start talking about the whole stack, if you want to run a miner, a node, and hold your own keys, on a hardware wallet, you start encroaching $1,000. And for a lot of people that don't really know all of the benefits of Bitcoin, I just think it starts to price them out. And cheap hardware is what maintains decentralization for Bitcoin. So I think the more we can create solutions for average people to affordably get in this space, just like Bitaxe has done, like the more widespread adoption we could get with people actually actively participating in the Bitcoin network, like running a node.
Definitely, I do agree onto that. It's literally needed. And you caught onto one thing, which is like most of the people are actually going into this whole topic with like, well, now I do run a node on my own, but what does it actually benefit me apart from, okay, I can connect my wallet to it, which is such a tricky and hard to answer question. Because, I mean, sure, technically you don't need it, but when you want to protect your privacy and everything else, which is hard enough on Bitcoin, it becomes quite a
Mhm.
challenge to make sure not to use someone else's server.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're using someone else's server, you're giving away your IP address. They can see your transactions. They can know exactly what you're doing. When you run your own node, like even when you're solo mining, right? It's you are in full total sovereignty. You own your data. you have full privacy, you have full control. And really, that's what Bitcoin is about at the end of the day. And yeah, it is a god awful lot of work. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it takes hundreds of hours of research. And I hate that I've become so busy that I can't like read almost anymore. It's really frustrating. Like me and Hunter really hate that we don't have a lot of time to read anymore because the space is always like constantly evolving. But yeah, it requires a lot of work. It requires a little bit of upfront cost, but it does pay back in the long run because if other people's servers get shut down, you know, you have yours in your home. Someone has to physically come and unplug it. And I'm not letting anyone come in my home and unplug my server, so there's pros and cons, right? Obviously, you have to sacrifice a lot of time and do research and maybe a little bit more upfront cost, but you are rewarded on the backside with privacy and sovereignty. And we give so much privacy up nowadays. I don't think people quite understand all those little check boxes you have to check off when you go on someone's website. Like they're everyone literally monitors every single thing you do on a website and uses it to market against.
I think you just cut off here, but yeah, I do agree with you. It's quite a thing. Like privacy is a needed right here, and it becomes quite challenging, especially if there's something going on with the data that you do provide or that other people do use because you purchased something on the website or something else, which is so valuable to make sure that this is the securest thing to do. And as you said, like it is so easy to just have like a mini PC, either be it a Umbrel, Start9, a Raspberry Blitz, or whatever is out there. All of these things are open source. Some of them do have the benefits and disadvantages. Some do have other things to it. So it really becomes a challenge to actually decide what you want to do with it. But the most crucial part about it is if you do take the step and go out there and decide, well, I want to run this at home because I don't trust anybody, which is good, then you're dipping into a water which will tell you news stories about what to do with it. Because then the rabbit hole just begins to start for you. There's so much going on. It literally took me 1.5 years to actually understand how all this thing with lightning is going on and so on. And it's still a rabbit hole. There's so much more stuff to learn about it and what else. It just takes time. This is probably frustrating to a couple of people. So I do see why plenty of people are into the plug and play nodes, which obviously comes with a little bit of a disadvantage of being pricey. But considering the fact that somebody else needs to do the labor, that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's the whole dilemma. It's like, if you want to do something, you can do it yourself and save a lot of money, or like you just said, someone can do all of the work, and then you just have a super cool final product, but it just comes at a higher cost. So I'm curious to see what this community kind of comes up with. I think there was some talk a while back about people maybe trying to create like a node or something, but some other avenues that we want to try to explore too, because we always try to ask ourselves what can we do different. And I think along with um, home mining is obviously very important. I think that running a node is very important too. Wish there was something that was easy to use without so much upfront cost. And I know there was a thing we were talking a while back on maybe trying to extend like the affiliate payout on public pool over to people who run nodes as well. And I know that maybe generated some privacy concerns. So we were talking about maybe just an on-off switch. I think that would incentivize people to run nodes too. I
Oh
know
yeah,
this is kind of
definitely.
hard to do, but that would be really awesome. Like that would be the first, probably one of the first use cases of being incentivized to run a node.
As far as
If you
I
had a
do know,
Bitaxe
this kind of
Townhall.
functionality is currently being worked on. I don't know about the current status of it, but I've seen that it's been worked on. I don't know how far they are into it.
Yeah, that would be really awesome. I think that would encourage more people to run a node too, because I know Ben's affiliate program does really good. A lot of people look at public pool to get discounts and whatnot. So the payouts are starting to become really cool to someone who just doesn't expect to win anything unless they actually mine a Bitcoin block, right? So that's definitely one good adoption case that's gonna catch a lot of eyes for people to run their own node and mine toward their own instance of public pool.
You
That would be
know,
super cool.
you mentioned previously that one thing that is really concerning about using, let's say you purchased a hardware wallet or you downloaded some software for your Bitcoin wallet and you generated yourself a wallet. And now you do use the server of someone else because you want to connect to the Bitcoin network and you don't have a node yourself. I think, and maybe I'm a little bit crazy, but I do wish that some of these servers actually go down and people are no longer able to connect to the node and cannot access their funds. I do hope for that because then this would incentivize people to actually start up their own nodes and use them.
Yeah, that's kind of a scary thought, right? Yeah, that's why we try not to depend on anyone's servers as well, right? Like on the business side, it's kind of weird because
It's tough.
managing a node for a business could be literally like a full-time job, and obviously when you're a small business, to like constantly keep up with like liquidity and Lightning channels because you want everyone's experience to be super fast with Lightning, pleasurable, so we do pass that off to a third party, which I mean, we know those people. I know that's discouraged, but we know those people really well. One of them only lives an hour away from us. But for true peer-to-peer Bitcoin usability, like you should absolutely run your own node. So hopefully more people start looking into it. That's definitely something we preach as well, at conferences when we meet people in person. We always recommend solo mining, like solo mining to your node. And we try to explain the pros and the cons of that and how to move, how to have your own sovereignty in this space. Because as the world continues, um, with AI and everything else, they're only trying to harvest more and more of your data so they can use it against you.
Yeah, it's totally a thing. And with that, I mean, it's totally the ethos that we try to achieve here with all this open source stuff that we do, all this work. We've seen so many people coming in here thinking that's a great idea and just take it and make it a closed source project, differentiate a little bit or what else. Well, they do miss the crucial part about this. What we try to do, not with just education about what's Bitcoin, how to use it, how to run your own node, or how to even get started mining with something as little as a Bitaxe, a NerdNodes, a NerdX, a NerdQX, what else? All these devices that are out there that have been introduced to the open source community are from Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners, fully open source for a reason, because it is needed to understand what's going on, and we need to make sure that nothing ever like end bleed happens again. Having a firmware from a company that is producing ASIC chips is one thing. Having a firmware that can literally shut down your device is another story. And it's so scary that most of the people don't know about it. But, well, what you're going to do? There are not that many ASIC manufacturers out there, so you need to make sure that you do use the ones that are the cheapest, because in the end, most of the people only think profit-wise in short time preference. That is more or less also the thing that I do think is one of the most important things that needs to be changed. That people need to acquire a thinking about long-term preference, which does not apply to any of these big mining farms. If they cannot sustain for 2 months, they are basically bankrupt and need to close their company, which is obviously not going to happen. So they are still in the fiat business. And what we try to achieve here is to give out as much as we can, the knowledge, the hardware, the software, so that everybody can evolve with it and improve themselves and gain a little bit more of what this ethos is of sharing it because for the greater good from the community for the community.
Yeah, me, myself, John from FutureBit, and Bart from Satoshi Radio, we all had a really good talk backstage about how screwed like large miners are if the price of Bitcoin doesn't double, right, with each halving event. And I think that these guys literally have the worst business models in the world. And I think what I see from trying to be a forward-looking individual is that I think all these guys come into home mining, and I told Scott that like when Bitaxe first found a block, Hunter was driving, I was sitting in the back seat, Scott had passenger, and we drove Scott to his hotel in Nashville. And Scott was so starstruck because like BitX just hit a block. BitX was still kind of a new concept to majority of people, right? Although it'd been out maybe a year or so
Longer.
previously. Yeah, yeah. So it'd been out for a while previously. And he was just like, I just never thought it would happen this fast. And I was like, Scott, man, like you guys got to be prepared because I can just see everyone coming into this space now that this has happened. And I bet, man, you could guarantee that as more blocks get found and more people get excited about this movement, that these large corporations will come into Bitcoin mining and they'll act like they've always been here, for the plebs, when in fact that's just absolutely not the case. They've always done everything to make Bitcoin mining inaccessible, if anything at all, right? So it's going to be interesting to see in the years to come for the next halving how these large data centers sort of adjust to, the rewards getting cut in half and what Bitcoin's price actually does, right? Because its number go up technology the way everything is, but it doesn't always do that. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of strategies these guys come up with to sort of survive. But I think home mining is just the way that the network stays secure because it just makes sense. A bunch of people mining, not really expecting anything in return, but you have the potential to get a reward. I could see that being a better business model than what these larger guys are doing, unless they find a way to get free energy eventually. Their business models are pretty bad.
It's not really that incentivizing actually, and it is definitely true. It's a little bit scary, especially taking a look on what will come in the future. But it's not scary for us. It's scary for them because they do know at some point it needs to be it needs to be profitable for the companies to sustain. And if it doesn't, well, they need to shut down the operation, which is not the case for us. We can still be there because, well, literally, if you do have like a cell phone charger in your kitchen running 24/7, you don't bother about that. But you're still securing the network if you find some blocks.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, what this movement leads up to as it gets more adoption is the large ASIC manufacturers just open up their hardware to everyone, right? And people can just sort of use that to their benefit, or OSMU can just, I mean, you guys need documentation, right? It's like no one wants to give freaking the most important piece to the puzzle so that everyone can engineer like really cool devices and uh, devices that have like actual use cases because there's an entire heat punk movement that is very open to open source mining. They actually want their devices to be open source so that they can tailor the firmware to do what so that they can control their miner, right? When they're heating their home or heating their water or whatever their use case may be with heat reuse. Like, hopefully in the end, if they do start losing and they see this space picking up momentum, hopefully, if anything, we just get more hardware manufacturers willing to work with this community and work with this space, which would be beneficial across the board. And maybe that would make forgiving them a little bit easier for what they've tried to do with Bitcoin. Just maybe.
Yeah, it's a hard topic there, especially with having them just telling you, well, we've always been there for you. Well, they try to be the gatekeeper for a period amount of time, and now, well, it does feel a bit odd that they jump into it. Wh- I'm sometimes a little bit going really big balls out there and thinking about it, that with this whole movement that we tried here with incentivizing people to start home mining with such a little device such as the Bitaxe or any other of these open source devices out there, that we do see plenty of these companies out of a sudden jumping onto this trail and telling the people, well, we've always been there for you. Well, if you've actually followed what they did over the years, it might be looking a little bit suspicious to you. But that's the thing it is, and that's sadly the thing with news and everything else. You need to keep up with them, otherwise, you're gatekeeping.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're not really to the point yet where we can have a lot of meetings with like the big guys, but I'll tell you what, and Kelsey, I see she's in the crowd. This is actually really funny. Is that at the end of the conference, Bitmain needed some boxes, and we were throwing a bunch of boxes away. So we gave a bunch of boxes to the Bitmain people so that they can put their leftover residual stuff at the end of the conference and send it back wherever. And supposedly, someone at Bitmain is supposed to buy like a lot of Bitaxes for all of their employees, which is absolutely hilarious. Um, if that happens, I can't wait to tell you guys about it because it'll just be the most hilarious thing.
To be honest, I'm just waiting here to see Bitmain announce their solo home mining device.
Oh, me
It-
too.
I'm just waiting for it, to be honest, because at some point
He's,
they can't ignore this. And as I said previously, this whole scene is so fear driven. They will jump into it eventually at some point.
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, I don't know if I would love for Ben to jump up and kind of talk about that because I know he's like a beast on the hardware manufacturing side. But I know that I know that Bitmain is eventually going to jump into this, and they have accessibility to like the most critical part, right? So like I don't know what that looks like for everyone, or how good they can compete, or if they would be focused on some they would try to make it as proprietary as possible, and I think those limitations would still allow projects like BitX to supersede them, but
Probably
I
developer
don't know.
Algo is also commenting onto this and said that they probably won't do it because it's cannibalism to the whole business, which is probably true because as far as I do know, for example, you can't go over into a store and say, well, I want like one S21 miner from them. No, you need to purchase a ticket to go in there to actually be able to purchase a couple hundred devices. You cannot just purchase one single device. That's not possible. The whole business model is built a little bit different, bigger, and with more fiat than you can think of in mind.
Right? Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I get it though. I get it. They may expose their real prices too if they're building something so small, or they may be such a big business that if they built a small solo mining or home mining device that it would just be priced way too high because they think their shit don't stink, right? So
I mean, one
who
of the
knows?
biggest things that they do have is their FPPS pool. So, with introducing something for home and solo mining, they will probably kill and cannibalize this business, which I do agree with developer Algo they will probably not do because it's too profitable for them.
I think that in the years to come that the home mining space definitely can't be ignored anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll start to hear more and more about it and see more people's ears perk up, in the big mining world. And what's funny is we actually work with some of those bigger people. So I don't know if you guys know, trying to think of the name. Oh, Abundant Mines. They're actually really good guys. Like a lot of these bigger mining guys, they actually support. home mining, believe it or not. And I think the movement is one of the coolest things they've ever seen. I think that the people who work for larger mining entities, I think they're just sort of stuck in their fiat jobs, but they are Bitcoiners at heart, but they just need a daily income. So they just got into a Bitcoin mining space and hired on with some company who has like corporate fiat strategies that probably has investors that don't really care about Bitcoin. But a lot of the guys underneath them, they absolutely love the BitX project. And a lot of them want branded BitXs so they can give to employees and customers just to also spread adoption. And we think that's like one of the most interesting things as well, because we thought devices like BitX would kind of offend the bigger guys, or maybe they just look at it as like a joke, like, oh, this is cute, like before BitX hit its first block. But the bigger guys are actually embracing it too, and they want it to succeed. So I don't know if you guys knew that, but that's just a little FYI from us, from
Yeah,
conversations we
Sean
have.
Sean from IZ Tech was also writing in the chat that Epic, the one who's basically producing uh, control boards for What's Miner and Antminer devices, they have debuted a home heater slash miner at the conference. I didn't know about that. Have you seen that?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting concept. They are actually utilizing the Intel hardware, so the Bonanza chips. They found a use case for them in a home mining device, and I think they're getting ready to sort of come to market with that soon. So it's like a modular hashboard design. I think it has 4 or 5 hashboards, and I want to say the device can get up to like 10 or 15 terahash. But the Bonanza chips sort of have that, they don't really have that efficiency that everyone craves, right? So
Yeah.
the way I kind of see the home mining space right now is that if you don't have something that is high in hash power or efficient, then it better have a good use case like heating, right? So I think that's the route they're trying to go, because I know there's a bunch of Intel chips laying around, right? And if someone finds a use case for them, then I think someone's going to open up the floodgates for a bunch of other Intel chips. So that'll be really interesting to see if people actually adopt that model that they're building.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting thought to think about because Intel they did discontinue the ASIC manufacturing for the SHA-256 algorithm. So obviously there are a limited amount of chips available. So at some point products will need to come to an end because they are no longer producible. On the other hand, it's quite interesting if Intel would start up again on ASIC manufacturing. So let's see if this happens, if more and more people are jumping into this and using chips from discontinued products like the Intel ASICs.
Yeah, I think they'll have to be into. It would be super cool to see someone make like a single Bonanza chip kind of USB stick, or like some little small educational home miner. Like it might be like a Nerd X or a Nerd Nos on steroids, right? Like you can get just a little bit more, and it'd be something really good for education too. I don't know. I mean, I've heard rumors that there's like tens of millions of chips out there, so I don't really know at the end of the day. Definitely not a part of any of those discussions. But I know there is being work to like open source the documentations too. So that would be really cool for people looking to build on the Intel platform. But you're definitely not going to get the hash power and the efficiency that you are of on like Bitmain chips, right? Or like Ardyne chips, or the latest ASIC generation chips. So there could be other use cases for them though.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting thought to keep in mind. What will happen and if there are literally these amounts of ASICs available? I mean, it would be good to have, right? Let's quickly answer a couple more questions and then we'll hit our 1 hour mark and probably shut down this town hall unless there are more questions coming in. We do have a question from Badger that he was guessing that OSMU tried to actually contact ASIC manufacturers directly in order to use new chips rather than recycling from old models. So it's yes, a couple of manufacturers and people in OSMU and OSMU developers tried to contact ASIC manufacturers, but most of them actually just ignores, which leads to the point that, as far as I do know, all of the people or all of these companies that are producing Bitaxes, they purchasing brand new devices, never plug them in, unsolder all the ASICs and solder them onto an Bitaxe, which also explains why these prices are in the range they are. If we could purchase these chips directly, probably from Bitmain or from other manufacturers that we reverse engineered or will reverse engineer in the future, then I don't know, it probably might be a little bit cheaper, but currently, as far as I do know, there are no brand new chips coming to any of these manufacturers. Unless there's this saying that if you are a certified repair guy or repair company for Bitmain, then you do get a limited amount of ASICs. Technically, you're not allowed to sell them. Maybe some of them do. I don't know. This is fishing out in deep water that I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's put it like this, man. Like when you are, it's no secret that we sell, mining hardware, right? And it's not a secret to other people who have access to things that we sell mining hardware either. So we get approached all the time with shady business deals, and there's people out there willing to like get chips to people in probably the not most ethical way. Um, but yeah, these devices are being manufactured by stripping chips off of all or new boards, sorry, where you're taking a risk of damaging the chips. So there's like a rate in which, X amount of chips will be bad, whether it's 5 or 10% or whatever, I think that number gets better over time from the certain different manufacturers we've talked to. And it's just refining that process until you can almost get every single ASIC chip off the board quickly and making sure it's working the way it's supposed to work. And then you have the binning issue, right? So you'll get one Bitaxe running 510C hotter than like another one because the chips vary in difference. So there's multiple things that go on which trying to make a Bitaxe expensive, and I don't know. There's also new people coming to market saying that they're gonna sell Bitaxe devices for $99, and I think that they revised that business model when they see the support and the customer service side of things and seeing how they have to allocate people to actually help people out, right? Or help their customers out, and maybe they walk back on that because I just tell you right now from doing it for almost a year, I just don't see how they can be profitable unless they're cutting a lot of corners, right? So, or maybe people just buy one and then they're just kind of shit out of luck when they have issues. So that'll be interesting to see as well. But yeah, the current chip situation is literally ripping chips off hash boards and making new devices, which isn't feasible for anyone. I know we have a few manufacturers in the crowd, and I know these guys absolutely can't wait until they get chips on reels or trays, however they're going to get them. It'll be awesome. Cool.
Alrighty, let's dive into 1 and 2 questions here. We do have a question from Wolfie who is asking if you do restart your node and you have produced a couple of shares with your Bitaxe to your own pool, does this do anything with these shares? So basically a share is just an answer to your pool that you do have. And if you do restart your node, you just restart your node. There's nothing really happening. If your share never found a block, it's unimportant to the network anyway. So there's that. It doesn't do anything if you do restart it. Well, We also do have Badger here saying it's a chip race in the US is looking to start into manufacturing ASICs and building factories ASAP. Yeah, that's definitely a thing that I do notice. Maybe Matt, you do have an opinion on this as well. I do see that like a couple of these manufacturers that are coming out of the US are trying to get into this business, which is nice to see to have a little bit of competition to the global economy. Obviously, I would not mind to have other manufacturers from all around the globe to jump into this. It's always good to have competition. It benefits the end consumer in general.
Yeah, so I think like the first thing about this sort of topic is that this isn't something that's going to happen within a year. Um, Again, there's people in the crowd that know a lot more about this than me, but you know, for instance, they've been building a Taiwan semiconductor factory somewhere. I want to say it's either in I think it's in Nevada or Arizona. They've been building a huge facility, but there are I think it really all comes down like no matter who's doing the engineering, I think that the all of the people who own the intellectual property and the machines that actually do all of the critical stuff are still overseas, right? So anyone can do engineering and come up with a ASIC model if they have the time, the money, and the resources and all that good stuff. But it still all funnels down to a handful of foundries, that kind of control the whole ASIC chip manufacturing process, or they call them wafers. So only a few people own the machines that shoot all the electrical circuits into an ASIC with lasers. So it'll be interesting to see. I think there are a lot of people that will continue to come into the ASIC space. But if we're all still using the same foundries, then does it really solve anything? You know what I mean?
I mean, one thing that it would probably solve is it would definitely open up a price war between all these manufacturers because they want to make sure to get it as cheap as possible. There are a couple of factors that are not able to reduce prices. For example, like we do have this, and it also comes into another question that we had in the chat, like what's the current status of open source ASICs? Well, there's Block, for example, who they try to create an open source ASIC chip, which is coming with some sort of a caveat to it because you cannot technically, you're not allowed to open source everything about this chip. You want to produce an ASIC chip, you need a ton of money to actually develop it because these people that are intelligent enough to lay out these circuits and make sure that this thing actually works and can be manufactured, they cost a ton of money. And then you need to rely on some sort of a blueprint which is told you by the manufacturing company that you need to use because that's the standard that they can use. You're allowed to use this with your product if you do develop something onto this, but you're not allowed to share this. So even though a Block is trying to get into the open source market or trying to introduce something that's an open source ASIC, it's not 100% open source. It's also the thing that I always try to anticipate to the people. Well, we do call the Bitaxe the world's first open source Bitcoin ASIC miner that you can use at home. Technically, it's the second. The first open source model never got any popularity, so therefore the Bitaxe has been announced to that. And the second thing is we don't know how to produce any of these ASIC chips from Bitmain. So that's the solely point which is not open source. I think that's okay. I mean, I don't want to spend millions of actually doing all the work of or purchasing people that are capable of doing the work of developing an ASIC chip. That's a ton of money that's going into that, and that's not going to change in the future. Not in the next 10 years, never.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard Scott say before too. I see he's in the crowd now too. I think I've heard him say before that you could spend tens of millions of dollars engineering one, and like if your engineering's garbage and it don't work, then you're just out of that much money, right? So it just kind of you need a lot of traditional finance to make it work for sure.
All right. With that, I'm quickly waiting if a couple more questions coming up into the chat. if you are listening to this later on, make sure to check us out on discord.gg/awesomeu. This is basically our main source of communication and sharing information about all these projects that we do have in Open Source Miners United. And if you want to know a little bit more about it, even for those that are in the audience right now, and you want to read a little bit of documentation about all these projects, you can head over to osmu.wiki to get a little bit of an overview of what kind of devices and what kind of knowledge we do have in this community. There are bits and pieces that are missing. It's never complete. If you want to contribute to it, feel free. We highly anticipate everybody to do so. But with that, I thank you, Matt, for being here with me on the stage and answering a couple of questions and sharing your experience on the event, which is awesome to hear. And I'm really sorry that I've never been over in the US. I wish next year or in 2 years I can make it over there and attend to a couple of these conferences as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me up, and I appreciate all the opportunities this community has enabled for us to have. I mean, it's absolutely amazing the work that everyone does here. There are some amazing contributors in OSMU. And like I said, the space is really heating up, no pun intended. And home mining is really here to stay. And Bitcoin Magazine is very corporate, but there is a lot of signal at these conferences. So we definitely want to continue to try to make it each year because I feel like it's the biggest platform or one of the biggest platforms for Bitaxe to have. And it seemed like they really, really embraced it this year. So it's going to be really awesome in the years to come. And everyone keep up the great work. And we love supporting you guys. We will always support you guys no matter what. Thank you.
It's awesome to have you here. So that's really great. Also, I want to make sure that all of you do know these Bitcoin events not only happen over in the US. Obviously, there are some awesome events over there, but we also do have awesome events over on the European countries. One of them, which I will be attending, is the BTC Prague. I will be there on the main stage and on the expo stage talking about BitX and open source mining as well as decentralization in general. So with that, I'm looking forward to all these nice events, onboarding more people, making sure that people do understand what BitX and Bitcoin is, that this is from Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners in the open source ethos as always, because there's only one way how this can be anticipated with having Bitcoin being published under the MIT license. There is nothing else than open source. So with that out of the way, I'd like to quickly do a little bit of a shout out here because Scott is not on the stage here. I'm not sure if he's willing to quickly come up and do his shout out. Otherwise, I will do so. Come up, Scott. Yeah. It's your honor to do your daily shout out or your bi-weekly shout out to the people that are in the audience.
Yeah, we need an update on his event too, man, because the one he went to is absolutely huge as well. I mean, I don't want to delay, this is only an hour, but
it might be, he told me earlier that he might not be able to make it on this town hall, so let's see if he's going to be able to do it. If not, that's okay.
yeah. On the AirPods and slap them in, bro.
He said, go ahead, I'll catch up on the next one. All right. With that, I'd like to do a little bit of a shout out here. I do thank everybody who's in the audience. Obviously, Matt, you for being here with me on the stage. Shout out to you, to all the work that you do. It's just amazing that you do spread the word of BitX and open source and home mining. I also do see Sean from IC Tech. I see Mr. V. I see Bank 98. I'm mixing up numbers in English. I'm sorry. Who was working or is working on the BitX Touch, which is a nice thing to see. I wish I had one. Also, I do see lots of contributors here. Huge shout out to Mutachum, dude. You're so good. I'm really thankful for having you working on all this stuff, reviewing my stuff, and just having conversations with you all over all the code stuff that we're doing. It's fantastic to see you here. I also see OGs like Developer Algo and others, Leroy Jenkins in here. It's so awesome to have all of you in here. And if I missed anybody of you or anybody of you who's feeling that I missed, I'm sorry. I love you all. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Till then, keep hashing and make sure to spread the open source community.